The evening had been still, almost forgettable, until my eyes landed on something that did not belong in my home. A phone, face down on the coffee table, its black screen catching the warm light from the lamp. It was not mine. It was not familiar. I reached toward it slowly, the same way someone reaches toward a memory they are not sure they want to remember. Logan Price had visited earlier that day, my son-in-law, the man who had once held my daughter's hand at the altar, before I stood at her grave instead. He came to drop off some papers, stayed for coffee, and left like he always did, measured, polite, distant. Logan never forgot things, not keys, not coats, not phones. Yet here it was, sitting in my living room like it had its own intention. Before I could even touch it, the screen lit up on its own. No sound, no vibration. Just 5 words glowing like a siren in the dark. She tried to escape again. My pulse stumbled, then raced. She. Escape. Again. Questions crashed like waves against my chest. I unlocked the phone without thinking, fingers shaking so badly I could barely swipe the screen. And then I saw it. A conversation thread so long it stretched back months. And right there, between lines I could hardly breathe through, was a name I had not heard spoken in the present tense for 3 years. Natalie. My daughter. The girl I buried. The one they told me I could not see because the damage was too severe, the flames too cruel, the remains too broken. I mourned her with every fiber of my being. I kept her room untouched. I talked to her in the dark when no one was listening. I believed she was gone. But here her name was, alive on a screen, woven between sentences that sounded like instructions, warnings, containment. She tried to escape again. In that moment, the world did not just shift, it split. Because if Natalie was trying to escape, it meant she was somewhere. It meant she was alive, and it meant her death had not been fate but fabrication. My name is Madeline Carter, and I never imagined my life would be divided so clearly by one single moment before the message, and after it. For 3 years I survived by routine, morning coffee, afternoon walks, evenings with old photographs I could not bring myself to put away. Grief became the language I spoke most fluently, and silence was the only company that did not break me. People said I was strong for moving forward, but I never really did. I simply learned how to function with a hollow space where laughter used to live. On Natalie's birthday, I lit a candle beside her picture. On Christmas, I wrapped a single gift and placed it under the tree for a daughter who could no longer open it. Some nights I sat in her empty room just to feel less alone. I tried to build a life that made sense without her, but nothing ever truly did. Not the condolences, not the careful sympathy in other people's voices, not the quiet that settled over my house like dust that refused to be wiped away. And then a forgotten phone lit up in my living room. In that instant, grief paused and suspicion took its first breath. I stared at the screen like it was a doorway I had never noticed in my own house. Every message I scrolled through deepened the ache in my chest until breathing felt like a skill I had forgotten. The conversation was between Logan and someone saved under the name Mother. It took only seconds to understand who she was. Elaine Price, his mother, the woman who cried beside me at the funeral and pressed tissues into my shaking hands as if she mourned the same loss. But her words on the screen were not the words of a grieving grandmother. Did you give her the dose? Keep her quiet. Lock the door this time. If she escapes again, you will regret it. My throat tightened, my vision blurred, yet I kept scrolling as if truth itself was oxygen and I would suffocate without it. Dates stretched back months, then years. Commands, updates, confirmations. And then in the middle of it all, like a blade sliding between bone and memory, I found the message I had never expected to see. Natalie is waking more often. Not Natalie was. Natalie is? Alive. Present tense. Breathing somewhere in the same world where I stood frozen with a phone that did not belong in my house. A photo appeared further down the thread, attached casually, almost carelessly. A dimly lit basement. Concrete floor. A mattress on the ground with thin blankets. And on it a girl curled in on herself, knees tucked tight as if she were guarding what little pieces of herself she had left. Her hair was longer than I remembered. Her face thinner, but the shape of her wrist, the way her fingers curled inward, the angle of her jaw beneath the shadow, I knew her like I knew my own reflection. My daughter, my Natalie, not burned, not buried, not gone. I pressed the phone to my chest and closed my eyes, but the darkness behind them was not empty anymore. It held fear, rage, hope so sharp it hurt to touch. One thought repeated like a pulse inside me. Someone took her, someone hid her, Someone lied. And now I had proof. Until that night, I had carried guilt like a second skin. The funeral haunted me, not because of the flowers or the eulogies, but because of what I never saw. I was told that Natalie's body was too damaged, that the flames from the crash had taken her face, her skin, even the shape of her. The closed casket was for my sake, they said, to spare me the horror, to help me remember her as she was, not as she had become. I believed them because grief makes you obedient. It makes you accept what hurts least, even if what hurts least is still unbearable. Logan stood beside me that day, eyes red, jaw set like stone. Elaine wept loudest in the room, clinging to my arm as if we were united in loss. Neighbors whispered, pity dripping from their voices like warm honey. No one questioned the closed lid. No one asked to see her, and I was too shattered to demand truth. I signed the papers mechanically. Autopsy waived. Identification waived. The doctors insisted there was nothing left to recognize. I nodded, numb, broken in a way I did not have words for. They told me Natalie was gone, and I let them bury a coffin I never opened. Now, standing in my living room with Logan's phone in my hand, the memory of that day twisted into something foul. A funeral without a body. A casket without proof. A mother who was told to grieve instead of understand. All at once, the pieces began to shine like broken glass in light that finally reached them. Maybe there was no body to show. Maybe that casket was not protection. Maybe it was disguise. And the truth I had mourned for 3 years was not death but deception. There are moments when the world does not give you time to think, only time to choose. I could have waited until morning. I could have pretended I misunderstood the messages. I could have placed the phone back on the table, untouched, and gone on living in the shell of a life I had built around grief. But mothers do not stay still when their children call for them, even in silence. I grabbed my keys with shaking hands and dialed the only person I trusted to help me face what I was seeing. Jonas Rivers, my brother-in-law, a man who had always questioned details others accepted too easily. He answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. But when I told him what I found, every trace of fatigue vanished. "Keep the phone safe," he said. "Do not confront Logan. Do not let anyone know you saw it. I am coming over right now." He arrived in less than 15 minutes. No coat, no hesitation, just determination carved into every step he took across my porch. Together we sat at my dining table and scrolled through message after message, each one tightening a noose around the truth we could no longer ignore. Jonas took pictures of everything. Screenshots, dates, attachments. He backed up the photos to 2 different drives without speaking. When he finally looked at me, his voice was low, steady, unshakable. "This is evidence, Maddie, real evidence. We need to go to the police." I nodded, not as a grieving mother anymore, but as a woman preparing for war. The police arrived just after sunrise, their cars quiet in the pale morning light. I watched from the passenger seat of Jonas's truck as officers walked toward Elaine Price's front door. The house looked peaceful, almost gentle, pale brick walls, trimmed hedges, a welcome mat that read "Home Sweet Home." But now, with the truth in my hands, it felt like a mask stretched too tightly over something rotten. Elaine opened the door with surprise painted perfectly across her face, like she had rehearsed it for years. Her voice trembled as she asked why they were there, her hands fluttering to her chest like a startled bird. She invited them inside politely, the way someone does when they believe their lies are still airtight. But the officers did not sit, did not soften. They presented the warrant, firm and clear, and stepped past her. For the first time, I saw a flicker in her eyes, not grief, not fear, but calculation. She tried to guide them toward the kitchen, offering coffee, offering explanations. They ignored her. Instead, they moved down the hallway toward a narrow door I had never noticed before. The handle was scratched, metal dulled from use, and on it, a lock on the outside. My breath stopped. Elaine stepped in front of them, blocking their path with a smile stretched too thin. "That room is for storage," she insisted. "There is nothing back there. You are wasting your time." No one believed her. An officer turned the key she swore she did not have. The door groaned open, the sound heavy and aching, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. Cold air spilled upward from the stairwell, carrying the scent of concrete, stale blankets, and something human, something living. The steps creaked as we descended. The light faded with every move downward, until only the beam of a flashlight guided the way. My hands shook around the railing, knuckles white, heart thundering so loudly I could barely hear the officers speaking. At the bottom stood a room I had never imagined in my worst nightmares. A place meant not for storage but for imprisonment. and somewhere inside it, I knew was the truth they stole from me. The flashlight beam moved slowly, careful like a hand reaching through memory. The room was small, unfinished, cold enough that my breath left a faint cloud in front of me. A mattress lay on the floor with blankets piled loosely on top, the kind that were washed only when someone needed proof of care. In the corner, a bucket, a tray with half-eaten food turning gray around the edges, the kind of details you never forget once you witness them. My every step felt like walking through water, slow and heavy, but I kept moving because something inside me already knew. I passed a metal chair with restraints bolted to the arms. A chain lay coiled beside it like a snake waiting to be remembered. The flashlight shifted, cutting through the darkness, and stopped on a shape. Small. Human? Breathing? She sat curled against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly as if she were holding herself together by will alone. Her hair fell long and tangled across her face, but the moment the light brushed her features, something deep in my body recognized her before my mind had time to catch up. Natalie. My daughter, my heartbeat, my reason for learning how to exist. Her eyes opened slowly, searching through the darkness like someone waking from a dream they have lived too long. For a second, she seemed unsure that I was real. Her gaze moved over the officers, then toward me, stopping the way a compass stops when it finally finds north. Her lips trembled, parted, and the softest sound left her throat, a voice worn thin but still mine. Mom. I did not remember crossing the room, but suddenly I was kneeling beside her, hands shaking as if I were the one who had been starved of light for years. I touched her cheek with fingers that hardly felt human, warm, alive. She leaned into my palm like she had been waiting for that exact touch to return her to the world. The officer spoke behind us, calling for medical support, securing the scene, naming charges I barely heard. All I could feel was her breath against my shoulder, faint but present, a ghost returning to skin. For the first time in 3 years, I held my daughter, not a memory, not a photograph. I held proof that she had lived through hell and I was here to pull her out of it. Natalie was taken to the hospital that same morning, escorted by paramedics who spoke gently, as if sound itself might bruise her. I followed close behind, one step behind the stretcher, afraid that if I blinked she would disappear again. Her eyes opened now and then, drifting in and out, not quite present but not gone either. Every flutter of her eyelashes felt like a miracle. The doctors moved quickly, assessing injuries, checking for malnutrition, dehydration, signs of long-term restraint. I sat in a chair beside her bed while machines hummed like distant rain. Hours passed in quiet fragments. A nurse adjusted the IV. A monitor beeped steadily. Natalie slept, her breathing shallow but steady, as if her body was relearning what safety felt like. It was evening when her eyes finally met mine with clarity instead of confusion. She looked smaller than I remembered, her voice barely a whisper as she asked the question that tore something inside me. Did you know I was alive? My answer broke in my throat. I told her I buried a coffin they would not let me open. I told her I believed pain because pain was all they gave me. Tears slid down her cheeks, not from anger but exhaustion so deep it seemed woven into her bones. She spoke slowly, pausing for air, but every word was a blade cutting through the story I thought I knew. The night she disappeared, she had not crashed. Logan had driven her to his mother's house. They offered her tea, sweet and warm. She woke up in the basement, wrists bound, head spinning with chemicals she could taste on her tongue. Elaine visited often, sometimes to feed her, sometimes to scold her, always to remind her that I had moved on. Your mother signed the papers. Your mother accepted your death. She is living fine without you. Natalie believed it for a long time. Isolation turns lies into truth. And then she looked at me, voice trembling like glass under strain. I tried to escape, Mom. Every time I did, they punished me. But I kept trying because somewhere inside me, I thought you might still be looking. The world had taken so much from her, but not hope. And that was where everything began to turn. While Natalie recovered, the police began pulling threads I once believed were dead ends. They revisited the night my husband, Andrew Carter, passed away a stroke, they said. Sudden, unpreventable. I cried through the funeral without ever questioning the finality of it. But grief blinds and the truth does not shine when we refuse to look at where it hurts. Toxicology reports from years ago were re-examined by fresh eyes no longer softened by sympathy. They found traces of a sedative in Andrew's system, a drug too strong to be prescribed casually, a dose no doctor would recommend without supervision. The original paperwork listed it as an anomaly, insignificant, buried like everything else beneath condolences and casseroles. Then officers found something in the basement, a bottle labeled with my husband's name, only half empty, the prescription written by a clinic he had never visited. The handwriting on the label trembled slightly, as if written by someone nervous, careless, or desperate. Natalie remembered something too. One night long after her captivity began, she heard Logan and Elaine arguing upstairs. Andrew never should have fought back. If he had just signed the transfer, none of this would have happened. My heart locked inside my chest. So Andrew had seen something, known something, refused something. And for that he was removed before anyone could follow his suspicion to the door, beneath which our daughter waited in darkness. The police questioned Logan. At first he denied everything, hiding behind lawyered silence. But evidence does not bend for comfort. Photos, timestamps, prescriptions, messages, each piece stitching together a story too sharp to ignore. The truth was not simply that Natalie had been taken. It was that Andrew had been silenced, and the people who took my child had been planning this far longer than I ever imagined. The courtroom felt colder than the basement ever could, not because of darkness, but because justice requires everything to be seen, and truth laid bare is rarely warm. I sat beside Natalie, her hand resting lightly in mine, fragile but present. Jonah sat behind us, a silent pillar of support, while Logan and Elaine took their places across the room with eyes that refused to meet mine. The prosecution began with evidence that sounded almost unreal when spoken aloud. A locked basement, medical evaluations proving long-term captivity, digital logs of sedatives ordered under Andrew Carter's name, screenshots of every message from Logan's phone, projected large enough that no one could look away. At the center of it all, my daughter, who had lived 3 years beneath the home of people who once called her family. Logan broke first. He asked for a deal before lunch recess, voice shaking like a child who finally realized the storm he helped build was now collapsing on top of him. He confessed to driving Natalie to the house, to restraining her when she fought back, to following instructions he claimed were not his own. Fear, he said. He did it out of fear, out of loyalty, out of obligation to his mother. Fear might explain obedience. It does not excuse cruelty. Elaine's face barely flickered when he spoke. She held herself together like a statue, every expression carved carefully to appear misunderstood, wounded, betrayed by the very son she raised. But her words failed where evidence did not. Her voice cracked only once when the prosecutor asked why Natalie was never allowed upstairs. Elaine said she was protecting her from the world, from disappointment, from heartbreak, from life. That was when I stood leg steady, voice calm in a way I did not expect. You did not protect her, you buried her. The room went silent. Natalie leaned forward, eyes bright with something stronger than fear now. Something like reclamation. The judge moved forward with sentencing deliberations, but in that still moment I knew the truth. They had taken her voice for 3 years. Now she was taking it back. The verdict came down beneath fluorescent lights and held breaths. The judge spoke slowly, voice steady, as if the weight of every word needed time to settle. Logan stood pale and trembling, hands clasped tightly in front of him. Elaine, rigid and composed until the end, stared forward without blinking, as if refusing to acknowledge the walls closing in around her. Logan Price was sentenced first decades in federal prison, with additional years added for unlawful confinement, assault, and obstruction of investigation. His shoulders crumpled when the cuffs closed around his wrists, and for a brief second, he looked at Natalie the way a drowning man looks at shore he knows he will never reach. Then came Elaine. Life imprisonment, no possibility of parole. The courtroom did not cheer, did not gasp. It simply exhaled a long collective release of air held far too long. She remained still as the words sealed her future, only her jaw tightening, the only sign that the mask she wore had finally cracked. Officers led her away, and she never turned back. Not once. When we walked out of the courthouse, sunlight hit Natalie's face fully for the first time in years. She closed her eyes, inhaled softly, and whispered, "I am free." This time I did not cry from grief. I cried because she was alive to say it. The first time we stepped back into that house, there were no lies left clinging to the walls. No false warmth, no scent of her perfume heavy in the air, just silence, clean, empty, echoing silence. A sheriff's deputy unlocked the front door, clipboard tucked under one arm, and reminded us we only had limited access. Evidence had already been cataloged. The property was under court administration now. But we didn't come looking for furniture or heirlooms, we came for closure. Natalie hesitated at the threshold, her fingers gripping my sleeve. The last time she stood on this floor, she was being led downstairs against her will. Now, sunlight streamed through every window as though the house itself had surrendered. We followed the hallway to the narrow door. New wood framed its edges where officers had pried it open. No lock. No darkness waiting. When we descended the steps together, her hand in mine, the basement no longer felt like a tomb. The mattress was gone, chains removed, concrete scrubbed and sealed. Only faint patches of discoloration remained, shadows of what once happened here, nothing more. Natalie stood in the center of the room, face turned toward the light pouring down the steps. "Not this room anymore," she whispered. "Not this version of her." And she was right. We walked out of that house with nothing in our hands, yet everything we could have hoped for. Natalie didn't want a souvenir, not even a scrap of fabric, not a chipped tile, not 1 ounce of memory that carried her name like a wound. Some places are not meant to be kept, some are only meant to be left behind. Weeks later, papers were finalized. The house, once the center of Elaine's planned empire, was ordered to be liquidated, profits directed toward restitution, and a victims fund issued under court authority. When our lawyer placed the settlement in front of us, heavy with zeros and possibility, Natalie didn't ask for cars or travel or escape. She asked what we could build. Together we drafted something Elaine never imagined: a resource foundation in Natalie's name, offering emergency shelter, legal advocacy, trauma treatment, and funding for missing person recovery cases. A place for girls who never got the chance to scream loud enough to be heard. A place where light enters the corners that darkness feeds on. It launched quietly, no cameras, no speeches. Just a sign on a brick building and unlocked doors waiting for footsteps. Natalie hung the first photo in the lobby. Not of the basement, but of the sunrise the morning she testified. The sky swollen with light, proof that darkness ends when someone refuses to bow beneath it. She smiled, standing there, not healed, not done, but alive enough to grow. And growth is the one revenge no villain ever prepares for. The foundation opened its doors on a gray Tuesday, the kind of morning that feels like the world is waiting for a reason to breathe. We had furniture, we had funding, we had paperwork framed on the wall, but no footsteps yet. No lives saved, no voices whispering, "Please help me." Just readiness. On day 5 she came. A girl no older than 19, shoulders curved like she was trying to fold herself into the smallest version of existence. Her backpack was torn, shoes uneven, hair tangled like she'd been running for years instead of miles. She paused at the entrance, not stepping in, not turning away, just shaking. Natalie reached her first. She didn't ask what happened, didn't ask why she came, didn't press her like a reporter searching for headlines. She simply opened the door wider and said, "You're safe here if you want to be." There are moments you don't forget, the kind you feel in your bones instead of your skin. When that girl stepped over the threshold and burst into tears, it was like watching a wound unravel so it could finally heal from the center outward. She collapsed into Natalie's arms, fragile, trembling, and Natalie didn't flinch. She held her. No basement, no locks, no whispering lies in the dark, just warmth, just safety. Just 2 survivors breathing the same air and deciding the future no longer belonged to monsters. That night, as we turned off the lights, Natalie whispered, "None of this erases what happened to me, but it makes the pain worth something." Healing isn't a finish line. It's a doorway you step through again and again, some days steady, others shaking. Natalie still wakes from dreams with her pulse too fast. I still catch silence in my house and listen a little too closely. Pain lingers, but so does strength. Sometimes that's enough. The foundation continues to grow. More girls come. Some stay one night, others months. We help them file reports, rebuild identities, find therapy that doesn't ask them to rush. We teach them what someone once tried to extinguish in us, the belief that no soul should live in the dark. Elaine and Aaron sit where doors lock behind them now. No voices to manipulate, no basement to disappear anyone into. Their names no longer hold power, only consequence. As for us, we live forward. We cook dinner together, we watch bad movies, we walk past the mirror and see women we fought hard to become. Not broken, not buried, reborn with scars that tell the truth louder than silence ever could. If you're still here, listen and carry this with you. Believe your instinct before someone teaches you to doubt it. Look twice at the things that don't feel right. And when the world grows dark, be the hand that turns on a light. If this story reached you, share it. If it moved you, comment. And if you believe no woman should live unseen, lend your voice here. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's steady, and it lasts.